Welcome back to L&D Behind the Curtain. And Alex, this is our 5th show already, and I think things are gaining momentum, aren't they?
Feedback's been phenomenal, and it's really good to see that the work we put into the show each week is being enjoyed and appreciated. I think people are really liking the kind of straightforward and honest approach from the guests.
Yeah, it's been great. And in a few weeks' time, actually, we've got Di McDonald on, who's obviously a client of ours, but Director of Learning at St James's Place. And it was really her, I guess, last summer when we worked with her and her team on a podcast that inspired us to really go this route and really find people that were prepared to be candid and open or what have you. And that was really the style we went for, right? So something we wanted to repeat for Behind the Curtain. And I think it's working.
Yeah, I think it's simply a case of people that are successful and that have achieved things don't mind sharing some of their failures as well as some of their successes, as, you know, really it's just all part of getting it right.
Yeah.
And I hope that's where our listeners can really benefit, you know, from our guests sharing their experience and talking about the projects that define them or challenge them the most.
And I think this week's no different.
The whole idea behind developing the training package wasn't about this is how you talk to somebody about their career. It was around this is how you recognise the type of conversation that whoever just knocked on your door wants to have with you.
This week we've got another leader from the world of L&D, Rhys Davies from Tilbury Douglas, which is formerly the construction part of Interserve, and someone again that likes to tell it how it is, really. What I like about this one is that Rhys, as he freely admits, isn't trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the initiative he's launching, but rather to change the existing culture in his organisation to allow people to get the most from their managerial training. And, you know, being in recruitment myself, I think it's really interesting to see just how employee attraction and retention are such important drivers for the programme he's developing.
It's like any other sales pitch, to be fair. You've got to sell it to the business. And what they want to know is, how much is it going to cost me? Where are the benefits? How am I going to realise those benefits? And what do the benefits look like?
So hi Rhys, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Good morning, both.
So I'll probably just jump straight into it and really get an idea about you and just to get to know you a little bit better. So do you want to start telling us a little bit about your career, maybe pre and also within learning and development?
Ooh, crikey. Okay, well, originally I went into the teaching profession, found out quite quickly that I didn't enjoy it, children being what they are, as in children. So I actually found a route into adult education later on through, I joined the NHS as an IT training manager, so it combined two things for me, the interest in learning and development with IT. So I was quite into computers back in the 1980s, which is a long time ago now, I guess. And everything's changed an awful lot since then. So it was a progression route, really. And I've gone through the IT bit and then came out of the NHS into the construction industry and never really looked back. I had 2.5 years out of the construction industry, absolutely hated it, and came back to it with Interserve at the time, with the responsibility with their shared services team for looking after the construction part of the business. And then as the Interserve group was dissolved and broke up, then I stayed with the construction part of the business. The rest of it got sold off as part of the facilities management buyout, which was fine. But we went down to about 900 people. We're steadily increasing again through just good husbandry, really. We got the chief executive says we stick to our knitting, so we do more and more of what we're really good at, rather than sort of speculating in different parts of the construction industry market.
We know each other already, Rhys. Obviously, you're a client of mine, and
yeah, we've done some work together.
And we've seen some of the huge projects that Tilbury Douglas undertake. But one of the things that struck us, and we made films about it, was the great culture at Tilbury Douglas. Tell us a little bit about Tilbury Douglas and the culture there.
Well, Tilbury Douglas is actually probably one of the older construction companies that we have in the UK. It was originally formed back in the 1880s, believe it or not. Wow. Has gone through a number of different iterations and different cosmetic looks on it until it was finally bought out to become part of the Interserve group. And then 2-3 years ago, I think it was November 2020, the Interserve group was dissolved and we became Tilbury Douglas once again, sort of going back to our roots, as it were. And the culture in the business, I think it's one of the things I like about it. I think that's what brought me back to the construction industry more than anything else, is that it's inclusive. Nobody's beyond being spoken to. Mm-hmm. I mean, genuinely, I was in the office yesterday morning and it was quite quiet at the time. And the next person into the office who came and sat by me was the chair, Nick Pollard. And, you know, morning, Rhys, morning, Nick. And that's it. That's how it is within the industry. And generally, that I've found that always to be the case, to be fair.
When we've made those films for you, we've concentrated on that kind of early career stuff. We had some apprentices that were lovely. I mean, nervous as hell to getting on camera, delivered what ended up being a beautiful film for the Open Doors event last year. We then followed up with a series on the women in construction. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you're developing your young people, whether you're looking at graduates only or developing people, etc. How did Tilbury Douglas look at that type of thing?
Well, big question. Well, small question with a big answer. So we really are interested in both facets of early careers. So we bring apprentices in at 18 years of age through the trades with Tilbury Douglas Engineering, and also into the professional, the technical element of it. So quantity surveying, engineering, site management, and so on and so forth. So we bring those apprentices in potentially at level 4, potentially at level 6. And then we also counter that with bringing in a graduate community as well, who've already got their degrees. But of course, those guys haven't got the experience of working in the muddy field unless they've spent some time with us as a summer placement student, or even taken a year out from their university studies. And that in itself can be an opportunity for people, because if we've had a summer placement, it means we know what that person's like. So at the end of it, if the site manager turns around and says, "Rhys, we really need to keep this guy on the hook, so we come back to us because we think he'd be a valuable employee in the future," then actually we might sponsor that student through their years of university that they have remaining.
Yeah.
So they might come and do a year out with us as well, which means we get to know them even better. We can shape them in our way. They come back, they've got a little bit of experience. They become a graduate. Now, from this year, we're actually going to make a more rounded proposition for our graduates. So this is starting in 2023. When a graduate comes into our business, we're going to offer them an opportunity to rotate through different technical parts of the business. So a site manager, for example, might go and do work with the commercial department for 3 months, and then with the design department for 3 months, or the planning or temporary works, or just to get a much more rounded experience of what it is. Because at 18 years old, you go to university to do a civil engineering degree or a site management degree or whatever it is. Do you really know what it is you want to do when you grow up? You might want to work in the industry, but if you've got exposure to the different parts of it, then it makes a much more informed choice for those guys as well.
I mean, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up myself. Yeah. But
Mate, I'm 60 and I still don't blinking know, so.
But what you said there actually is a rant that I go on quite a lot. In that, when I first got into television, that's exactly what you did. You came in for 2 years, you'd do 3 months in audio, you'd do 3 months in editing, you'd do 3 months in VT in the machine room and learn the technical side. And at the end of it, they started to recognise where your passions were, what you were liking, what you're good at, and then obviously developed you further. But listen, I don't want to hog this too much. I know Alex wants to get into your day-to-day role. Just for people that don't know Tilbury Douglas, give us a quick flavour of the types of projects that you undertake, in terms of the company, I mean.
So we do an awful lot of construction work through regional offices up and down the country. So a lot of it's public sector stuff. So hospitals, prisons, police stations, courtrooms, schools, those sorts of things. But we also have a smaller infrastructure side of the business as well, which focuses mostly on highways work and working with the water industry as well. So currently we've got a massive project down with Thames Water, based out of Reading, which is an interesting project in itself. So that would be the breadth of our work. But there's an opportunity for people to move between infrastructure and building as well. So you can, work on a water treatment works one year and then be working on a school building the next.
Interesting. So I shouldn't call you to look at a quoting for my extension then?
You can if you like. I don't mind doing it, but I don't think you'd be able to afford it.
So just wanted to...
Yeah. Well, I think we've had a lot of opportunity in the business recently, Alex, and to be fair, what's happened is that we've now got we've had a change in the way that the business is structured. We've had a change in leadership within the HR team, and it means that we've now got an opportunity to change the shape of the HR team to deliver what the business needs us to deliver, or what the new business needs us to deliver. And as a result of that, we've had a good hard look at ourselves and say, well, okay, look, we're spending an awful lot of money recruiting people that we aren't really looking after because we're just also very, very busy. And we're doing a brilliant job of bringing them in, and we're doing a brilliant job over there of actually educating them and developing them, but only when the manager's told us what it is that they want to or need to do next. So why don't we just sort of close that loop, really, and not just bring people in and induct them or onboard them and then pick them up for training and learning and development later on, why don't we just close that loop and say, we're not just bringing you in, we're going to bring you in, we're going to get you completely embedded in your career pathway. Now, that's nothing new, but over the last 5 years or so, I think with the trauma, and it has been a trauma for a lot of people within the business that it's been through, it's sort of stuff that's been cut back on and neglected a little bit because budgets got really tight. We had the pandemic, as everybody keeps referring to. I was fed up of hearing about it, but it did have a massive impact on what we were doing. The business shrank down to probably 900 people, and we're back up to 1,250 odd now. So we're sticking to our knitting, as our chief executive says. We're doing lots more of what it is that we do well, and it's working for us.
And do you think that also has an effect on talent attraction and talent acquisition?
Yeah, we're becoming a bigger player in the particular field that we do now, but we need to up our game in certain areas for sure. And that's my job now, to be fair. So getting out to the universities, building relationships with them. And this is nothing new, by the way. The business have been doing this for years and years and years. It's just something that we need to start thinking very, very seriously about. And I do genuinely believe that Tilbury Douglas has got a lot to offer for anybody coming into the business.
And those initiatives, do they tend to be like bespoke learning and development strategies for career pathways, or are you utilising things like apprenticeships and upskilling, for people on the job?
We bring apprentices in onto an apprenticeship programme at various different levels, 3, 4, 6, to scratch the surface, really. So we bring them in as an apprentice at that level. But then if we've come in as a level 3 or 4 apprentice, once they've completed that first apprenticeship, there's an opportunity for everybody to go on and do the next level of apprenticeship. But they're not an apprentice any longer. We call them an employee. So then anything beyond that, it's a development programme which just happens to be funded through the apprenticeship levy.
And have you had any challenges on implementation around apprenticeships? Or
not really, genuinely. I think our biggest problem is the inconsistency of delivery, or provision, I should say. Well, and delivery, actually. Because we can go to, I won't name any particular schools, but we could go to a certain school that delivers a commercial or a quantity surveying apprenticeship at level 3 and 4 this year, go back to them next year with 5 more candidates, and they'll say, oh, no, we're not doing the level 4 anymore, or we're not doing the level 3 because they didn't get the quantity of people wanting to do that qualification. And it's for them, it's about the money. Yeah. So, we want to build a catalogue of regular, reliable providers who deliver what we need them to deliver and consistently.
And I guess you're national as well, which is part of the challenge, right? That
you've
got to deliver small numbers of learners all over the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is pockets. We're not on our own, though. There are a lot of the other construction business working exactly the same sort of setup as us, just not necessarily the same sort of pockets of work.
And do you go via the CITB for your selection of providers, or are you going, just doing your own search?
No, we do it direct. I've got a very good early careers manager who works for me. I recruited her a couple of years ago. She came to me from a provider, an apprenticeship provider. So there's nothing she doesn't know about apprenticeships. And she's actually really good at holding providers to account, making sure they're delivering what they ought to be delivering in the way that they should be delivering them. That sounds like we're beating a stick on the providers, but actually she does exactly the same to the learners and the managers. So, we get Bob Hawkins getting all hands up.
So, we're going to talk specifically about your managers initiative in a bit, but tell us about the L&D function at Tilbury Douglas and what training you offer as well.
Okay, so what we're doing right now is actually looking at the provision of. So we've always done technical training. So we get an engineer who needs to do a setting out course for engineers, organise it, no problem at all. We get people who need to do a confined space course, book it, no problem. They're commercially available fairly regularly, and like any company, we need our people to be qualified to do the jobs that they're employed to do, or that they need to do and fill those roles. So that's one part of it. Let's just call that technical development, okay? There's also the personal development of it. So if we put somebody, or we think someone's got the capability of becoming a supervisor or a manager, then actually we'll identify those people quite early and put them either through a level 3 qualification in leadership and management with the ILM, or a level 4. So they get the benefit of the learning and the development of it, but they also, because we do it in groups of 10 or 12 people at a time, they also get the benefit of meeting people from around the business they wouldn't necessarily be sharing the same space with. So you're building peer networks, you're sharing best practice, and it helps us get away from silo working, which with the best will in the world is going to happen if you stay working within the middle of South Wales, for example.
Yeah, and having that sort of more rounded overview of the company is going to be a positive thing. And of course, as you say, you start to build this internal network where you can pick the phone up and call someone in Wales, and you're based in Birmingham, and they're in a different department. You've met them, and you've crossed paths. That's always a good thing, surely.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I'll give you a small but silly example. Okay, we like most people, we used to use steel sheet to cover an excavation. If there's a hole in the ground, put a steel sheet over it. Okay, you've probably walked over them, probably tripped over the edge of them, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the businesses said, "Oh, we actually," one of the parts of the business turned around and said, "Well, actually, we use a yellow plastic thing now." And it's like yellow, so it's easily identified, as opposed to sort of moulding into the same colour as the pavement around it. It stands out. It's just as resilient and as strong to take a foot to cover a hole in a footway, and it's far cheaper than a big piece of sheet steel, sort of a quarter of an inch, half an inch thick. So if we hadn't known about that, if they hadn't shared that bit of best practice, it would have happened in that area, and we've still been spending and wasting time trying to carry heavy bits of steel around instead of lightweight plastic covers.
Yeah, so it's that like cross-pollination of ideas, isn't it? And
Yeah.
are you bringing people together virtually, or do you get them into like a training academy or something like that?
We do both. We do both. So this has to be a blend, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to bring somebody into a training environment or a learning environment, and I prefer learning to training, by the way, because learning and educating people is different from training someone. I could train a dog to jump through a hoop, but I can't educate it as to why it's doing it.
Yeah.
So but it wouldn't be worth me bringing people into a central location for half a day, for example. But if you've got a day of learning and the topic of learning as well, then that's worthwhile, especially when you've got that group working together. So yeah, that'd be stuff we bring people together for, but we try and do it as conveniently as we can.
What you mentioned earlier, about the cover, they're the kind of water cooler moments that I guess my clients that are working remotely probably lose out on a lot now. That kind of chat in the kitchen at work, and that you can't really replace.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, I've got my little office set up here, like most people have had over the last couple of 3 years or whatever. Not the tidiest, I know, but I know where everything is, so that's okay. But when it comes right down to it, I could get loads of work done when I'm sitting here. I get loads of work done. If I go into the office, it's a fraction, but I learn so much more about what's going on in the business, and what's going on with individual people as well. And that we are a social animal when it comes right down to it, and I think we need that. So I think the whole sort of working from home thing has been really good in terms of bringing us forward in the way that we use technology. We wouldn't be doing this, Nathan, 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's brought us forward, but it's also caused some problems for some people as well. And we've lost that social aspect of the working life. And I think it's actually difficult to do.
And then why a blend's probably the way to go anyway. However, this does actually segue quite nicely into what we talked about in the pre-interview. We discussed an initiative that you're launching at the moment, quite a big one, company-wide across Tilbury Douglas. I think you've called it the Manager's Toolkit, and this kind of slogan of Better Together. Tell us a little bit about that programme and really where the need to run it came from.
One of the things that we wanted to do is understand why people were leaving our business within 2, 3, 4 years of joining us, given that we'd taken all that trouble and spent the money, spent the time recruiting them in and all the rest. So we did some exit surveys with a company, Great With Talent. I'm sure they won't mind me saying that, to be fair. And they set up, we have a starter survey and we have a leaver survey, as much as a staff engagement survey every year. But the leaver survey has shown us that people leave within 1 to 3 or 4 years of being with us because they didn't feel as engaged with the business as they could be, because nobody spoke to them about your next job could be if you take this pathway, or if you did this, then your next job could be that, or you have an opportunity to go here or go there and all the rest. So we put a number of tools in place at the time, and one of them things was a capability matrix, basically for individuals to download spreadsheet, plug some scores against some defined criteria to find out whether you were requiring development in that particular area, or you were performing for the right level for the job that you've got, or you were a gold star, So that served several different purposes. It tells me that I need some development in a particular area of maybe commercial management. So if I look at the criteria, I can actually go to my line manager when I'm doing my appraisal every year and say, look, I know I'm failing on this one. We might agree that I'm failing on this one or not performing to the right level. Can you set me, or can we set an objective that will give me the exposure and therefore the experience and therefore the capability to improve that particular skill, so that when the next time they go back to the matrix, they can change that red to a green, They might even be able to change it to a goal because that was what was holding them back. And then when the next level of role comes up and the line manager looks across his capability matrix scoreboard, he could go, well, that Rhys, look, he's scoring greens and golds across the way, whereas George down the road is only scoring a couple of greens and mostly reds, or mostly green and a couple of reds. So if I'm looking at promoting somebody, I can look internally rather than just say, oh, we need to bring in a new managing quantity surveyor or whatever it is. So the whole thing was about this. I don't have a conversation with my line manager about where my career's going. And that's because our line managers largely are still really, really focused on doing the job. But actually their job, their responsibility is delivering the job. They've got people working for them who are doing the job. And if we can keep those guys happy, as a line manager, I'm not going to be distracted by having to interview for the next QS because the last one left after 3 years because we weren't giving them what they wanted, and just carry on in the same sort of circle. So that's where the manager conversations came from. And originally it was about, recognising the type of conversation or just having a career conversation. That's how we started it. But then we recognised that actually there could be lots of different types of conversation. So it might be about, I don't know, it could be anything from, I've got a mental health problem, I've got a health issue, I need to, we're going to have a baby, all those sorts of things. It could be any topic of conversation. It might be a celebratory. It might even be a question of, I don't know whether to use a green pump or a brown pump in this particular situation. So the whole idea behind developing the training package wasn't about, this is how you talk to somebody about their career. It was around, this is how you recognise the type of conversation that whoever just knocked on your door wants to have with you. So how do you recognise that, and how do you deal with it? So then realistically, it's going to turn into a supporting type of conversation, a developmental type of conversation, or an enabling type of conversation. And then how to deliver that type of conversation, hold that kind of conversation every time you speak to somebody. Ultimately, I suppose the goal has to be things like, well, if I know what makes Rhys tick, then I know whether to use a carrot with him or a stick, or 70% stick, 30% carrot, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So we get a better performing, more satisfied team, reduce staff turnover, reduce cost.
You talked before,
increased productivity. Sorry.
So we'll come on to that actually in a bit. I think Alex will develop that a bit about KPIs and how you're going to evaluate and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about how you're structuring the course then. And I think you'd mentioned previously that you've got 100 or so managers across all departments. Tell us a bit about that and how they go through this program, and over what timescale you're going to get everyone through it, I guess.
Well, we've actually got about 400 people who have people responsibilities, and the end goal would be to get all of them through this program. But clearly, we need to prioritise and make it a worthwhile experience for all those who go through it. So it's 2 days. They will be back to back because actually, you talked about the water cooler conversations. It's actually the conversation in the bar in the hotel that leads to those sort of big discovery, those gotcha moments or those light bulb moments, or whatever you want to call them.
Well, pre 10 o'clock at least, anyway.
Well, yeah, maybe. Okay, I couldn't possibly comment on your drinking habits, Nathan. I couldn't. He's a bit of a lightweight in comparison to some of the blokes I used to know, to be fair, but there you go. So it's all about that. So it's not just the developmental part. It's, again, back to that peer group, best sharing practice and all the rest of it. It just works always up, to be fair. But what we don't want to do is say, right, we're going to deliver this in South Wales now. So it's just the South Wales group of managers, because their manager is always going to be sitting around that table. So they turn around and say, well, I think that's a rubbish idea. It's not going to sit well, is it? So we're going to try and bring people in almost groups of the similar level from different areas, bring them into a central location, or as central as we possibly can anyway, and deliver it that way. So that's the method of delivery, so that we get more bang for our buck and a lot of unintended benefits, to be fair.
And you mentioned it took a little while to get off the ground as well. I mean, what were the stages you had to go through, and how long did it take, in terms of liaising with senior leaders and getting off the ground?
Well, it's taken me probably the best part of 12 months to get this sort of thing scoped out. What is it that we want? What is it we need? What do we want to deliver? How do we want to deliver it? And what's the content? So it's probably taken about 12 months from sort of drawing board to, and we're almost at inception. In fact, just before I came on the call with you, I had a call from the provider, and we're putting dates in the diary for this. So that will be happening now this year, which is great news. It's really good news. And it's a good time for the business to be doing it as well. So, yeah, they don't happen overnight. You come up with an idea. You have to sell the idea. It's like any other sales pitch, to be fair. You've got to sell it to the business. And what they want to know is, A, how much is it going to cost me? B, where are the benefits? How am I going to realise those benefits? And what do the benefits look like? And like a lot of companies, we spend an awful lot of money with recruitment agencies right now.
And so how do you go about demonstrating like return on investment or outcomes from a program like that?
I think when it comes right down to it, Alex, it's bottom line stuff. Yeah. So if we're not replacing an apprentice or a graduate engineer or quantity surveyor or whatever it might be within them starting with the business within 3 years, then actually that's a saving of £5,000 a head.
Yeah.
So realistically, it's not a great example, to be fair, because apprentices and QS bring any young person into the business. There are some things that people want, and we've had to sharpen our game on that as well. You're never going to stop somebody being approached by one of our competitors and saying, we'll give you another £10,000-15,000 to go down the road, because at the end of the day, they're young people. £10,000 or £15,000. Well, crikey, £10,000 or £15,000 a year to me is a lot of money if you're going to stick it on top of what you're already earning. So I do feel, though, that sometimes people regret making those choices. Our approach to it as a business is we can't match 10 or 15 grand.
Yeah.
But if you want to come back, doors open, because we already know what we're losing. So, if they want to come back, that's cool, because we all know we're all a little bit longer in the tooth. Sorry, well, Alex isn't quite as long in the tooth as I am.
Getting there.
Or Nathan. Nathan ain't either, actually, But when it comes right down to it, I think we're probably old enough and sort of experienced enough to understand that the grass isn't always greener,
It's very counterintuitive to hear you say that the door is always open to come back as well, because, a lot of employers just put the barriers up and, you've left and you've betrayed and we don't want you back kind of thing.
See, I don't understand that thinking.
No.
Because if I've invested 3 years of development costs and experience and understanding the individual and all the rest of it, why would I not want them to come back if they choose to? If they come back and say, look, you know what, I might have made a bit of a mistake. Oh, come on, come in through the door. Let's have a chat.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation.
And I guess at that 3-year point, like after they've been through all their onboarding and maybe their initial training, I mean, that's almost the most expensive time to lose them from the organisation because of all that investment.
No, absolutely it is. Yeah.
And it's I mean, L&D as a as a retention tool, but also an attraction tool. I think it's pivotal because so many organisations will look at the recruitment fees they pay, or the advertising spend, or their talent acquisition team spend. But it's far more than that they lose in terms of overall recruitment spend.
Oh yeah, for sure. But the trouble is the recruitment spend is like a here and now, whereas the investment in an individual, time, money, courses, everything else, that's sort of done over such a period of time. And it isn't just the courses that you're giving them to take away. You're giving one of your competitors a very competent individual, yes, potentially.
Yeah. And they're getting the commercial upside, of having them in their business.
Absolutely. But let's face it, back in the day, if I was given a company car, it was a Ford Fiesta or a Ford Fiasco, then and said, well, come down the road, Rhys, we'll give you £5,000 a year more in a Ford Capri instead, I'd have been off like a shot.
Yeah. So other than the obviously positive impact on recruitment and retention, are you able to measure anything in terms of like production output, or like commercial projects, the gains on that side of things?
Well, look, no one's going to be surprised by the statement that happy people are more productive in the working environment. And I know that our teams out in the regions do an awful lot to sort of keep people, not keep them happy. That's a bit too twee, to be honest with you. But they do a lot to keep engaged with their teams. So they might have a night out or a day at the races. We have something called Give a Day of Your Time as well. So Give a Day of Your Time is where a whole office or individuals within that office get, I think it's actually 2 days a year to go and work for a charitable organisation and do something for them.
Nice.
So it might be that we go and redevelop some community allotments, for example, or we say we'll go and paint the local youth club for you, or we'll do some building works around the youth, put a new roof on the club, whatever it might be. So Give a Day of Your Time, or Gedoit as it's known.
So you will do my extension then?
I didn't say when. I said we do the roof. And only in one day. As you get one day.
With developing what Alex has asked you there, I mean, evaluating, well, one, I would imagine you can't really evaluate this type of shift in culture and approach for a good few years. But how will you go about the metrics, the kind of, how will you sit down and evaluate it? Will it be a presentation to your board, or how does it work?
Yeah, well, with that look at it, we'll be able to take those, exactly that, number of people coming into the business, number of people leaving over the last period of time, and more importantly, or as importantly, the reasons why people are leaving. So we don't just look at, this is the primary, what's the primary reason for your leaving the business, career development, promotion opportunity, whatever it might be. But there's also some free text in there. So people get an opportunity to sort of indicate their, I'm trying to think of the right word. I was going to say elucidate, but that's probably not the right word.
It's a good word.
Yes, good word.
Is it?
Yeah. Word of the day.
Yeah.
If I could say it.
I was talking to Joanna the other day, and I said, because your role's peripatetic, and she said, "It's what now?"
I haven't heard that word in ages. Actually, I guess since pandemic, right? Peripatetic was always how you describe like apprenticeship assessors who are going around different workplaces.
A roaming role. Yeah.
Well, I'm learning. I'm just going to listen to you two. I mean, I'm hearing words I've never heard before in my life. It's fantastic.
Stick with me, you'll hear words you have heard before. But not
well, I've been on the building sites. Yeah, I've heard a few of those. So, what does success look like for you personally? I guess because obviously you're you've got your own career to think about, and for the organisation, what would success look like?
Success for the organisation is around retaining people and sort of being able to develop them, see them go from that apprentice programme right through to, I don't know, regional director, member of the senior leadership team. Why not? Chief operations officer, chief executive. There's always going to be that opportunity. I know it doesn't happen very often because there's only one of those, and we might have 100 apprentices or whatever it might be this year. But nevertheless, there is that career progression. If we can keep somebody for that time, then that's the goal, isn't it? Grow your own is one of the expressions we use at work. We want to grow our own, so that when we get somebody coming into a management or a regional management position, then actually it's because they know the business. They know the people within the business. They know the industry. They know how we do it around here, to use common parlance.
Yeah.
And realistically, that benefits us in all sorts of ways because it helps us win work.
And what about you personally? What's your why? What's your purpose? What would you get from a successful program being rolled out personally?
Do you know what? It sounds really twee and really cliched, but I get a real kick out seeing people change their behaviours as a result of some education they've had. And then having the opportunity to go back and put it into practice. And then if they even turn around and say, do you know what, Rhys, that really helped? Or even, again, it sounds to me, but if somebody just says, thank you for sorting that out. But if they say it had an impact on what I do and the way I do it, then that gives me the biggest kick of all, to be fair.
Listen, Rhys, I've seen you with all kinds of people at Tilbury Douglas, and the way you communicate with everyone, it's fantastic. I think it's a strength of yours. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, you don't change. And I would imagine that's driven by wanting to see these. Well, we worked with a lot of young people with you guys. Yeah. Wanting to see them get better and do well for themselves. And we met all kinds, if you remember, the first time
we did. Yeah, we did.
And some real sweethearts, really, weren't they? Like real youngsters, no experience, tough backgrounds. And you literally were changing their lives. That seems to me to be your why.
Well, yeah. I mean, the early careers one in particular. I mean, I'm just thinking about Lloyd. Guy who came from up in Merthyr on the Prince Charles Hospital there.
That's it.
And that's a brilliant project, by the way, because that's an exact example of what we're trying to achieve. We bring people in from the local community who are actually helping to build the hospital that's going to serve the local community. So you want engagement. You're not going to get much more engaged than that. Because my nana had a hip replacement in this hospital,
Yeah.
And my mum used to work here or whatever it might be. In fact, have had so many people come to us because their mum worked there or just come, can I do a work experience placement? And I'm thinking one person in particular did a work experience placement, wanted to go to university. We sponsored her through university. She came back every summer and did a placement with us. She's just done a master's degree. She's still with us.
Well, that contribution will stick with them for life. You know, they'll turn around in 30 years and be like, I helped build that hospital.
Absolutely. And I think actually in the video, one of the young ladies says, I'm a Valleys girl. I live around here.
Yes. Yeah. Really touching. And again, where we saw firsthand, wow, these people really do like working here. They believed in the social side, you know, what impact they're having on the community.
It's because they care, Nathan. Yeah. They care.
Good team in Merthyr, and if they're listening, I doubt they are, but if they're listening, we had a fun shoot there, and just the most lovely people. And in fact, I did go to South Wales last year for the first time on holiday after enjoying the valleys of Merthyr.
Merthyr, yeah.
Merthyr, there you go.
Interesting. I'll just tell you, I don't know whether you've been told or not. You remember Lloyd that we were talking about earlier on?
Yeah.
So just for Alex's benefit, really, Lloyd came to us as part of something called a Kickstart campaign that the government ran a couple of years ago now. And actually, we didn't have anything that we could put him on. He came in one particular type of role, but he wasn't suitable for that. So what we did was we actually found him a placement with one of our subcontractors. And I think the comment, you have to watch the video again, but I think he said he just wanted to drive the big diggers, didn't he? That's what he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to do. And he came in, he started work. They gave him a job full time. He went on. He's now supervising other people and been promoted.
Brilliant.
He's like, and you think to yourself, don't give me. There is no other success story that's going to top that. Do you know what I mean? That's exactly what makes it work. That's why you do what we do.
When we post bits, as we do, bits of video on LinkedIn from this, I should probably link to that video because, I mean, to this day, Lloyd brings tears to my eyes a little bit, really.
I can't watch it. I can watch it. Obviously, I can watch it. But you're right. It does. It brings a tear to your eye because it's such a great story.
100%. And for me, that's what the learning environment should be all about, is giving people opportunities and seeing them flourish. It's such a good lad. Such a good lad. Anyway, so we'll start to wrap this up. I mean, Alex always likes to finish being the recruitment guy that he is, really, with sort of any sort of tips with career and opportunities for people. But I guess going back to the project, the Manager's Toolkit project, what would be your sort of key tips in terms of getting new ideas, up the chain, bought into by the business and then rolled out? What would be your 5 tips there, or few tips there?
Few tips would simply be find out what it is that the business needs. And if you're designing a program to satisfy the business, make sure that it satisfies those needs. Because if it solves a problem they don't have, they're not going to be interested, because it does take money and time to invest in those things.
So I've actually got a couple of questions. One of them is a little bit left field, because I know you're big into sport, Rhys, and you're a rugby referee as well. And I wondered, what you take from that side of your life and bring in, to your professional life.
Genuinely, rugby probably gave me more development in terms of managing people and how to talk to people than any other training course I could possibly have been on. Because if you're trying to help facilitate an environment for 30 hooligans, potential hooligans, without them actually killing each other, then, and you can do that. And if you come off with 31 of you having a good time at the end of it, or having enjoyed the experience, win, lose or draw, then, that's a success in its own right. So I coach referees as well now. So I'm coaching 3 referees at the moment. Right. I've got one young man who's doing very well for himself. He's gone from level, I know this doesn't mean an awful lot to anybody, but basically he's gone from being a starter referee to refereeing regionally in terms of the progression. So they referee locally, they go on to regional, they go on to national. He's refereeing regionally within 12 months of him starting refereeing with me. So we've been able to develop him. I'm coaching a young lady. She's just gained, her confidence has blossomed over the last 12 months, and she's now a far better referee because of that. Because she now is not, she was very self-critical, and actually she asked me a question. She said, I call them guys and this, that and the other when I'm talking to them on the pitch, and I do this. And I said, would you talk to people at work like that if you were managing them? And she's like, well, no. And I said, well, you're managing these people in their working environment. Yeah. So it's exactly the same. You just transfer the skills between the 2 environments and it works.
Yeah.
Just quickly though, Alex, I could shed some light on that question as well. I've actually seen Rhys give his assistant a 10-yard penalty for bringing in a folder that was wrong. So that's how the crossover works.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Rhys, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
We'll wish you luck with your programme. When are you rolling it out, by the way? Has it started or is it coming up?
No, we've just got approval for that. So that's going to go ahead now, sort of second quarter. So we will start delivering it. We can't deliver. Obviously, we've got to give managers notice because their diaries get so full.
Yeah.
So we need to give them a bit of notice as well. So we'll probably be rolling that out from the beginning of May, around the bank holiday, around the coronation.
Yeah.
There you go.
And this is sort of 2 days residential, is it? We didn't really touch on that earlier. It's 2 days residential.
Yeah, it will be. The provider we're using for this is a long-standing provider that we've used before, Clue Learning and Development in Leicester. Their base is literally on the campus of what used to be a Trust House Forte hotel. It's now I don't actually know what it is at the moment. It's still a hotel anyway. So they can literally walk across the car park from the hotel to the learning environment and back. So yeah, it is. It's that opportunity to spend time together as much as anything else in the learning environment, as well as the social environment later on.
Well, at the top of the show, we did promise you another honest and candid interview, and Rhys didn't disappoint, did he, Alex?
No, he certainly didn't. Just hearing the way that he talks about the culture at Tilbury Douglas and how approachable the management team are, and even, how they view people that leave and later return to the company. It's so refreshing. Yeah,
and we've worked with Rhys a number of times, and there's a real sort of family atmosphere there. We've been around their HQ and their construction sites, and we've met people from all levels, those with kind of muddy boots on and those with ties on, and often both, I guess. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I've ever seen Rhys bump into someone he hasn't had a bit of banter with, whoever they are.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to talk to someone in L&D who gets how integral L&D is to both retention and attraction of staff. I mean, you only have to look at the videos that you shot on their careers site, to get a feel for the culture and how important that is.
So that's show number 5 done, Alex. But who have we got lined up for future episodes?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, we've got Di from St James's Place Wealth Management, and she's fresh from a gold and silver at the Learning Awards. And we've got Paul Callahan from Metagedu Apprenticeships, who's coming on to tell us a bit more about the apprenticeship levy and how it can be used in L&D. And someone else, actually, a lot of our listeners will probably already know from her Facebook group, Progress Place, Katie Walton,